Hello and welcome to a new video. This is lesson 5 in the Math UC curriculum for Precalculus, and it talks about using the calculator with trig functions. Now, because this curriculum, I don't know why, but because they have a whole lesson on using trig tables, and then they have a lesson on using the calculator, I just don't know what to think about that. I'm not going to make anybody use trig tables since I've never used one myself. So we're just, since we've already used the calculator in the last lesson, instead of using trig tables, I think part of this is going to be super easy. All right, so here's something new. This slide does not look new. It's legit the same slide I've been using for like 3 lessons now. It's really come in handy. What is new though is the idea that instead of trying to find sides or the ratio of sides, we can also try to find the angle. So here's the deal. What we've done so far, we've known what the angle was. So sine of something equals, and then we've known one of the two parts, and we were able to find the missing part. What if, instead of knowing the angle and one side, what if we know 2 of the sides? Is there a way that we could figure out what the angle is? The answer is yes, but it actually, we actually have like kind of a whole new function that does that called the inverse trig functions. This is why I took issue in lesson 2 about them saying inverse for those trig functions, because those are not the inverse trig functions. These are the inverse trig functions. There's 2 ways that it's written, and one of them is using a -1 exponent looking thing. And you may have done inverses in Algebra 2, which is where you switch the x and the y and then you resolve. And so if so, this -1 notation should be familiar. The inverse function for sine is sine with this -1 up here, and then inside of whatever is right here is going to be our opposite and hypotenuse sides. And what it tells us is it tells us what the angle is that goes with that ratio. Pretty cool. But one of the ways we write it is with sine to the -1. The other way is they call it arc sine. And so you'll just see like ARC in front of each of these trig functions. It works the same way though. You put opposite and hypotenuse in the parentheses, and then whenever you press enter, it gives you your answer in degrees or whatever mode you're in. But we use the calculator to do this. And these are the 2 ways that it can look like in our book, our workbook for Math UC. They're going to ask you arc whatever. But on your calculator, what you're looking for is a button that says sine to the -1, and I'll show you where that is. But just to be clear here, like each of these, you could do the same thing. We could either say cosine with a -1, or we could say arc cosine. I don't know why there's 2 versions. I understand why the tan -1 and each of these with a -1 exists, because there's notation related to that is consistent in math. I don't know, and so if somebody who does know wants to leave me a comment and tell me, that would be super awesome. I don't know where the idea of using arc in front of the trig functions came from. But inverse trig functions are a thing. They do matter. One of the reasons they matter is if we know side lengths, now we can find the angle if that's what we're missing and that's what we need. That's a helpful thing to be able to find. So let's go ahead and see what our examples are going to be like. So each of these examples goes with 1 or 2 of the sections in our homework in our book. Hopefully it's pretty easy to follow along here. All right, example 1, super easy peasy. Use your calculator to find the decimal ratio, round to 4 places. These are so easy, you could use your phone calculator. If you already watched lesson 4 with me, we talked about how the phone calculator can actually lead you to having some trouble. But here, no, we could totally do this on our phone calculator, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and type all of these just in at the same time and then write down the answers. The only thing you need to do here before you start a problem like this is you need to check to see if you're in degree mode. Mine says it up here on my screen that I'm in degree mode. If you are the only person using your calculator and you've already switched it to degree mode, it should stay in degree mode unless you do a memory reset. But it is good to double check. So sine of 55 degrees. There are a few angles here that would give us non-decimal numbers that we could find sine, cosine, or tangent of, but most of them will give us these long, kind of gross-looking decimals. So just to kind of prepare you. Sine of 55, cosine of 63, tangent of 15. So we're going to round to 4 decimal places, and so I'll move this way. Make this be in front for me real quick. I don't know if it's actually going to work. Yes. Maybe. Sine 55 is 0.8192. Cosine 63 is 0.4540. Tangent 15 is 0.2679. Now hold on, I actually need to say something real quick. At the level of math you're at right now, rounding is something that is helpful to know how to do, but there's also this other cool thing we can do called truncating. And it's a cool thing we can do because it's a really cool word, and it's a really cool thing because what truncate means is that you just cut the decimal off. So if you wrote this as 0.539, you will have rounded to 4 decimals incorrectly, but you will have truncated to 4 decimals correctly. And I personally am fine with you choosing either to round or to truncate. Just know that there are other teachers in the world that may not be so willing to take either. You should definitely check with your teacher on their preference. And when in doubt, do what the directions say. But I just thought I'd throw that out there because I like using the word truncate. It's a really cool word. All right, example 1 was technically not really new. Here, example 2 is the new thing. So you are seeing, instead of sine, cosine, and tangent, arc sine, arc cosine, and arc tangent. And all that really means, as far as how you do it, is that you need to press a button that before we weren't pressing. What it means, as far as what we're finding, is that these decimals that we are being given are the ratio of side lengths. And what's interesting about that is that the way that triangles work, where the hypotenuse is the longest side, arc sine and arc cosine, the only values you can put in for arc sine and arc cosine are actually numbers that are less than 1 and greater than -1, and equal to in both those cases. Try it if you don't believe me. Once you know how to do arc sine or whatever, try doing arc sine of 2 and see what happens. Or maybe I'll do that so that you can see. That seems like a good idea. So, arc sine. So what it is we're going to use the second button and then press sine, which gets us the sine -1. Remember, arc sine and sine -1 are the same thing. So the inverse sine of 0.8492 is, we're in degree mode, 58.12 blah blah blah. It says round to the nearest whole number, so we'll just round to 58. Although it makes me uncomfortable to round to the nearest whole number, we'll do what the directions say. So what I was saying is that if you do second sine and you put in something bigger than 1, you get an error domain. And so you can either quit or go to. I'm going to press go to. And I've made a terrible mistake here because I do want to still be able to see what inverse sine of that was. So it doesn't work. If you're getting an error like that, it's because you've done something incorrectly. Because these decimals should be between -1 and 1. So now let's do arc cosine of 0.7231. And I did make up these decimal numbers, so this would round to 44 degrees, and second tangent. Now tangent can be bigger than 1, which you might have already figured out since this is a number bigger than 1, because it has nothing to do with the hypotenuse. Our opposite and adjacent sides, either one of those can be bigger, and that's going to affect how big our number is. So let's write these down. Nearest degree, nearest whole number. And so make sure you put your degree symbol, because when we know units, we put units, and degree is a unit. But there we have it. Here's our other new thing that we've got, and it is the idea of writing things in this format that you can see here. So you can see the degree symbol, and then you see an apostrophe, and then like quotation marks, right? And in this case, instead of, if you're thinking feet and inches, you're kind of close, because we do use those markings to signify like feet and inches. But since it's an angle, feet and inches don't apply. What's happening here is called minutes and seconds. And so it's a way of writing degrees that actually uses like fractions without us actually having to write the fractions down, interestingly enough. And so it lets us write things a little bit more precisely, and I believe it is used for latitude and longitude, and for navigation and things like that. I do think that this is one of those cases where if you end up in a career where you need to know how to use degrees, minutes, and seconds, there's likely to be some training on that. So degrees, minutes, and seconds is not something we're going to use a ton, but it is probably going to crop up annoyingly. It is something we can do on our calculator, but I do want to show you how it works real quick, just so that you could see. This has to do with minutes and seconds actually in the same way that we think of minutes and seconds as related to hours. So we have 47 degrees. We're going to start by writing down 47. We're going to add to that 23 minutes. So 23 minutes is how much of a degree, or in other words, 23 minutes is how much of an hour. Because the same people that gave us 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute are the reason that we have this whole thing going on. Same people. They really like the number 60. So 23 minutes is going to go over 60 because there are 60 minutes in a degree. Then this next one is seconds, 31 seconds. Now, how many seconds would be in an hour, or how many seconds would be in a degree? Not 60, right? There's 60 seconds in a minute, and there's 60 minutes in a second, which means there are 3,600 seconds in an hour or in a degree. And what we can do is we can type this in on the calculator, and it's going to give us an answer. And what I find interesting about this, I actually had to refresh myself on how to do this, because I haven't done this personally since I last taught Precalculus, which was not super long ago. But what I found interesting about this is that because of the way we write it abbreviated, that we don't actually write out the fractions. So I'm going to change that to a decimal by pressing math, and then go down one where it says arrow decimal, and it's going to say, you want me to change the answer to the decimal? And I go, yes, thank you, calculator. So what I find interesting, is that this long decimal that we have, it actually, was kind of shorter to write that in degrees, minutes, and seconds, especially if you consider that degrees, minutes, and seconds, in theory, we didn't round to get, whereas here with the decimal, we would have to round. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Oh, you maybe couldn't see the whole thing. What am I rounding this to? The thousandths, so that's 3 decimal places, 47.392. So essentially, this is kind of it's as though that we're working in a base 60 system whenever we have this degrees and minutes, and seconds. And so this was us changing this to base 10, which is what we normally use. And if you're interested in hearing more about different bases, then, that would be a subject for another time. So do the same thing here on this next one. And I have in the instructions here, which I didn't actually read, to do it first using unit multipliers. That's what the over 16 over 3,600 is. And then I said, check your answer with the calculator. So let me do that really quickly for this one. And the way we do this is we type in 47 degrees, 23 minutes, and 31 seconds. Let me show you where those things are if I can find them. The degree button is, so there's an angle menu right here if you press second apps. So we've got a degree symbol, we've got an apostrophe. We do not have the double quotes, or the double apostrophe, whatever you want to call it. I don't think pressing 2 twice would give it to us, but because we have this alpha keyboard here, it's actually, I think, somewhere in here. Oh, right here. The plus sign, if you press alpha and then press the plus sign, then that gives you your quotation marks that you want. So I'm going to press enter, which gives me 47 degrees. Just right next to that, I'm going to do 23, do second angle again, and this time go down to 2 or type 2. And then I'm going to do 31, and then I'm going to do alpha plus sign. Okay. And sure enough, that gave us the same answer. So good job us. And this is definitely one of those cases where you could be one of those people that are like, why do I have to learn how to do it without the calculator if the calculator will do it for me? You know what? I totally understand where you're coming from. And I think this is one of those cases where you're mostly right, that we might as well just use the calculator. That being said, with all math and with all knowledge in general, if we don't know how we got there, and something were to happen where everybody forgets how to do things, then it's going to be a lot harder to get back where we were. Perhaps I've read too many like young adult post-apocalyptic novels, but you probably have too. So you know what I'm talking about. You know that if District 12 had a better education system and made their kids learn math, they would not have had to be coal miners. Some of them would have been because coal was still necessary, but they also could have reinvented computers and other things so that they would not have to have been in the situation they were in. You know I'm right. Okay, so we're going to put the minutes over 60. We're going to put minutes over 60 and seconds over 3,600. And we'll type this in. We're going to use a beautiful, beautiful thing that our calculator can do, which is that I can scroll up and I can actually grab this that's highlighted by pressing enter. And I can just edit this if I don't want to have to like change everything. Whoops. Now, I don't know that it actually was all that quicker here. That's my coffee. Yeah, that's my coffee.
Need a drink.
You need to drink. You want to drink my coffee?
This.
No. You guys tell them coffee stunts your growth. Look how short you are. If you drink my coffee, you'll never grow taller. You never will grow taller. Okay. Ready? Oh, we go to math and down and decimal. Voila, 27.869. Okay, and then I also am just going to go up here and grab this so I don't have to go back to those menus. So 27. Your calculator normally just writes over things unless you see a little arrow, which was happening on the top of my fractions earlier. It's something to play around with to kind of get used to understanding like when your calculator writes over things or when it inserts things. But normally if you need to insert in an extra number, you'd press second delete, and then that lets you insert something in without writing over what's next. Oh, yep, see, we're right, 27.869. Okay. So if you're doing math UC, then you may notice this example and last example, that's actually split into two sections in the workbook, like one section after the other, like it has you do one and then it has you do the next thing. But I felt like it was just as nice to kind of combine them in this way. So I'm hoping that that's not confusing whenever you go look at the other thing. So in this example, we're going to use our calculator to find the measure of the angle, which is actually just like what we did on example 2. And then we're going to take that answer and convert it to degrees, minutes, and seconds. So I'm going to show you where that is in your calculator, although you actually might have seen it earlier because we were in the angle menu and that's where it is. We're going to do second cosine 0.3821 and press enter. And then I'm going to go second angle and pick the arrow DMS, which is the fourth option. And since the last thing we did was this angle, then when I press enter, it's going to change that. Okay, I was going to put effort into making these be nice answers, but then I didn't. So you're seeing an example of something that the calculator is rounding to 0.24. So we're just gonna write this down. And let's do that for this next one as well. Okay, so this is the normal degree answer, but if we want it to be in degrees, minutes, seconds, we go second angle. We pick the fourth option. You can use the arrows to go down and press enter, or you can just type 4 and it will pick the fourth option. Then here we go. This is even worse. So that's what we've got there. That would be our answer. Easy peasy. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, hit that thumbs up and feel free to leave me a comment if you would like. Subscribe to the channel. All of those things are super helpful to aspiring YouTubers like me. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Check out my website if you'd like to for more resources, and check back in about a week and I'll have lesson 6. Thanks.